Alright, in 2025, if you are beginning to edit video, odds are you're using one of three softwares. You're using DaVinci Resolve, you're using Final Cut, or you're using Premiere Pro. If you're using Resolve, odds are you're using it because it's free. You've also been told it's pretty powerful and does some neat stuff, all of which is true, but it's not super, newbie friendly. If you're using Final Cut, you're definitely a Mac user, and you're probably friends or know someone who remembers 20 years ago when Final Cut 7 was the best thing to ever happen to nonlinear editing. Because it was. If you're using Premiere Pro, you are probably a high school or college student attending school somewhere that has an Adobe contract, or you are the child of or friends with someone who's already bought into Adobe and they have convinced you that it's the way to go. If you're in this category of starting to use Premiere, even if I've gotten the reasoning why you're using Premiere wrong, because that happens, if you're in this category and you want to start making stuff but you're not sure where to start, let me give you my down and dirty just quick primer on everything you need to know in Premiere to start putting stuff out there now. Before I get into this, I've got to say, this is one of those things. Editing takes time to learn. Nothing I'm about to show you is magic, and it's all kind of pointless unless you're willing to put in the time and effort to really hone these skills and learn what they do. But this should give you enough information to start putting stuff on a timeline, cutting it up, and playing with it, and really developing those skills. That being said, let's jump in. Once you get Premiere open, it should look something like this, and this will allow us to create our new project. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button. Now, when this window opens up, it's really important. First of all, name your project. So I'm going to call this Premiere Primer. And then I'm going to make sure that its location is where I want it to be. If you let Adobe pick, it'll put it in your Downloads folder, it'll put it in your Documents folder, it'll put it somewhere weird. So we always want to make sure and actually choose where our project is going. And in this case, what you want to do is you want to make sure it's going to the location where all of your other assets are. So you can see I have my tutorial assets, I have my original footage, I have all of this stuff here all ready to go. A brief aside. It's important to understand how Premiere and other nonlinear editing softwares access assets. You always want to organize your assets into a save location before you import them into your project, because importing these files does not make them part of that project. It creates a file path link. If you bring in stuff straight from your recording device or out of your downloads folder, as soon as you remove that device or move, that link is broken, and then you get the red screen of death. Organize before you edit, because it's just going to make life easier if everything is in one place. So I'm going to go ahead and click Select, hit Create. Adobe will allow you to import stuff into your project before you even start. We're going to skip that. Once Premiere actually opens up, you will probably be in the Learning Workspace if you've never used it before. The Learning Workspace is great, but we're going to do something a little more efficient here. We're going to come up to Window, Workspaces, Editing. I like the Editing Workspace because I just feel like it's the most universally efficient, and it reminds me of Final Cut 7. It really was the best, and I miss it. The first place we want to address our attention is going to be this window right here. This is our project window. And you can see here it gives you the option to import media. You can either click that, you can also come up here to File, Import, or you can do everyone's favorite. You can go ahead and click and drag assets in. So there's three ways you can get footage into your project window here, but they all work just the same. Now you can see here that I've got all of this stuff. I've got some video clips, I've got an audio clip, and you can understand how this could get very confusing very quickly. It could get very cluttered. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some bins and organize all of our assets. So if you look down here, you'll see New Bin. If I click that, I'm going to call this one Footage. And then I'm going to go ahead and just drag all of my video clips into that footage folder. And then I'm going to create another one that I'm going to call audio. I'm going to take my audio clip here and just drop it right in there. Now, we've only got like 7 things we're working with here, so this is not super important, but if you start getting lots of clips and lots of audio and lots of different things, this becomes very, very important. If we direct our attention over here, this is our sequence, this is our timeline. You'll see right now there's nothing in this, and it does say drop media here to create sequence. So if I want to do that, I can go ahead and come here and I can select any one of these clips and just drag it out. That will create a sequence based off of the aspect ratio, off of the frame rate, off of all of the settings of my clip. Typically speaking, I don't like to do that because I like to have more control over my sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and Command Z or Control Z on a Windows machine. I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to come back to my project and I'm going to create another bin that I'm going to call Sequences. And if I come into my Sequences bin here and I come down to this new item icon right here and I click on that and I click Sequence, you'll see this menu pop up. And this is where you can control the frame rate, you can control the aspect ratio, all of those things of your actual sequence. So I want to use HD 1080p 2997, that's 30 frames a second. We'll call it Premiere Primer, same as the project, and hit OK. So now I have a sequence created here that has nothing on it, but it has all of my information saved. If I come back over here to my project and my footage, now we can start populating our sequence, populating our timeline with this footage, which is really, really easy to do. All you have to do is drag it out onto the timeline, and you can see we have clips that appear here. Now that we have some clips on our timeline, it seems important to go ahead and address these windows up here. So this is our program window, right? If I scrub through my playhead here, either by using the one on the sequence itself or here, you can see that we are scrubbing through our timeline, and whatever is at that playhead is what displays here. If you need to get a better look at something, you can always hover over this, and using your scroll on your mouse, you can zoom in or out so you can get a better look at something. If you need to do a mask or whatever, you can always then come back here and set it back to fit. While I'm talking about zooming, before we get over here, it's also important to note that you can actually zoom on your sequence as well. So if I come back down to my sequence, I select it, make sure the blue highlights are around it. If I hit the plus key, you can see we are zooming in, right? You can also, if you hold down your shift key, you can zoom vertically as well as horizontally, which is really, really helpful. Alright, back up here to this window here. Right now, you're not seeing anything here, right? But you can see up the top it says Source, Effect Controls, Audio Mixer, Metadata, etc., etc., etc. This functions as our preview window. And so if I come over here and I double-click on one of these clips, you can see now that I have that clip displayed here. And I can scrub through it, and I can look at it, and I can take information from it without it affecting my program or my sequence itself. Now, this is really, really handy because it allows us to take just snippets of individual clips. So if I want to start here in this clip, all I have to do is hit I. And if I come over here, I can hit O. So I have now set an in and out point on this clip. And if I want to take the whole clip, so the video and the audio, I just click and drag from right here. That will drag that out. Or I can take just the video, or just the audio. Really, really handy. We'll come back up here to this window in a minute, but let's come back down to our sequence and talk about some basic editing things. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these last 2 clips here that I don't need anymore by hitting the delete key. And so if we're looking at this, the first thing we may need to do is actually move clips around on this timeline, which is really, really easy to do. So if I go ahead and just select a clip, I can move it over, I can move this clip over, I can move this clip over, and I can then take our other shot here, and we can move things around as we need to. Now it's important to note that if you overlap clips, it will shorten whatever clip is on the dropped in side, right? So like if I bring that out like that, if I bring that back over, this clip is now shorter than it was before. No worries though, because you can always lengthen a clip back out to its original length by making sure you have your select tool right here. You can also hit the V key, and then you can hover over the edge of a clip and you can bring it back out to its original duration. You can also use this tool to shorten clips in either direction. This is really, really handy, and again, it does allow you to bring clips back out to their original duration, but be aware that it does not add footage. It only can go back to whatever the clip's original length was. So I bring these back together here. Let's say I need to not just shorten a clip, I need to split a clip into multiple versions of itself. So for that, what I need is the razor tool. So we hit the C key, and I can then take this clip and I can separate it into 3 separate clips that now will act independently of one another. And yes, you can lengthen or shorten them as you need to fine-tune the length of that clip. While we're here, you may have noticed that everything right now is in this V1 layer. That's because everything in Premiere is set up in a layered system. So if you see here, I've got V1, V2, V3, so on and so forth, and it does the same thing for audio. Anything that is displaying in your upper layers will display over the top of your bottom layer. So if I go ahead, and for right now I'm going to drop this audio down to audio 2 because these two things are linked. If I drag this up to V2 and I drag it over here, what we saw before was this clip here, but now because I have this footage on top of it, it's displaying above it, and therefore you can't see through it. This is all fine. This is really useful for putting B-roll over an interview that you don't want to delete a whole bunch of stuff, but you can always layer things and stack things as you're working with them. All right, let's talk about some effects here. So effects are one of those things that I'm not going to go into a super deep dive here, but it's really kind of important to know where they are and how they work. So if we're looking over here in this window, right, I have these 2 little arrows here. If I click on this and I come down to effects, this is where all of my effects live. And you can see we have audio effects, audio transitions, video transitions. I'm going to look for one effect in particular, which is the Gaussian blur. And you can see I have this blur here. I'm going to go ahead and drag that out onto my clip of our subject here. And what you'll see is that immediately nothing happens, right? But if I come back up here to what was our preview window with this clip selected, and I take my effect controls, this menu opens up, and if we scroll down here, you can see our Gaussian blur is now part of the controls for this clip. Now, yes, every effect will have its own set of controls and parameters and all of that, but this is just a really easy one to show you because we can not only demonstrate the effect, but we can use it to build a transition. So if I come here to where it says blurriness, again, we have to make sure this clip is selected. If I increase this blur value, you can see that everything gets blurry. If I decrease this blur value, it gets clear again. And I said that we were going to use this to build a transition. Well, what did I mean by that? Let me show you. This is really easy to do. All we have to do is a little bit of keyframing. So if I am here at the beginning of my clip, I'm going to go ahead and create a rack focus transition here. So if I blur this footage out, and then I come over here to this little stopwatch and I click on it, that adds a keyframe here at the beginning of our clip. And then I scroll forward just a little bit on our playhead, and I go ahead and take this blurriness back down to 0. What you can see is Premiere automatically adds another keyframe there. And if I need it to be longer or shorter, I can move this around here and we can have a longer or short transition. But check this out. So now we have this nice little rack focus transition that we built. Now, if you want to use the built-in transition, the default transition, that's also really easy to do. So if we just take our clip here and we hit Command on a Mac or Control on a Windows machine, Command D, that will add the default transition, which is just a little crossfade additive dissolve. Before we move on, I should throw out there that you can see that everything about this clip has this keyframe option. You can keyframe literally everything in Premiere. You can do scale, you can do position, and you can always reset it back to where it was. And even if you're not going to actually keyframe them, if you're doing position, scale, rotation, any of those things, crop, this is where you come to address that, even if it's not keyframed, even if it's how it's going to exist for the whole clip. All of these things are adjustable from here. Alright, back down here in our sequence, something else that gets really useful when we're talking about B-roll or just coverage footage, all of that, is the idea of being able to speed a clip up. And so if I come here and I click on my little camera icon here, and I come down to speed duration, I can increase or decrease the value of this speed right here. So if I want this to go faster, I can up it by 500%. You can see my clip gets a whole lot shorter because we've sped it up. If I undo that, you can also slow footage down and all of that. But one thing that you can do that's really handy is, say this gap right here is exactly how long I need a sped up clip to be, but I don't know exactly what percentage that is. If I go ahead and just take my footage and I drag this over here, just like that, and then I come over here, you can see right now it says ripple edit, but if I click on this and hold it, you can see we have some other options here. One of them is the rate stretch tool, which you can access by hitting R. If I then come over to the end of this clip and I just drag this back, what I've done is I have now sped that clip up so that it fits in between these other two clips, and it's really, really handy. Alright, trying to decide what to put into a video like this is kind of hard, but we're going to keep going here. I've only got a few more things I want to show you. Let's say you want to add some text to this video that you've created, right? Well, text is really easy. If I want it to happen right here where this camera is doing its thing, if I come over here and select my text tool or just hit the T button, I can come out here and I can just go ahead and start typing. Now, I can make this longer or shorter, however I need it to go, depending on what's happening here, but I'm going to go ahead and have it just be the length of this clip right here. Coming back over here to my effect controls, again, make sure this is selected. You can toggle this little switch right here down, and you can see we have all of our options for our font. We have our options for our color. Now, if you want to change the font, you do want to make sure and come out here and highlight your text. Otherwise, you won't be doing anything. You're setting it up for the next set. But if I wanted to change my font color, if I wanted to add a stroke, if I wanted to do any of those things, this is where I can do it. This is also where we can add in like our position and motion and scale and keyframes and all of that, like I said before. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, with this text selected, I'm going to go ahead and drag this down here. So if you're looking at this parameter is your X parameter, this parameter is your Y parameter, and Premiere will always do that with anything that has both an up, down, or a left, right. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this down here about center. I'm going to drag it over here. I'm going to have it start right there, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my position keyframes. But you can see here that I started this in the middle of my text. That's not really what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this over here to the beginning of this text. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take my keyframe and move it right over here to the beginning so that now my text is there. If I then come to the end of this clip, I'm going to go ahead and, because my keyframe is still active, I'm just going to go ahead and move this over here like that. And then I'm going to come down here and go ahead and use my Command D, Control D if you're on a Windows machine, add my little fades, and so now we have this right here. And again, you could speed that up or slow that down just by moving those keyframes around, but you can kind of see how keyframing works and how helpful that can be. Alright, two more things I want to talk about here. One of them is going to be this window right here. This is your Lumetri color. And if you don't see this, that's okay. What you would do is you go up to Window and you'd find Lumetri color. Now, I'm not going to really go super in depth about this right now. Color correction, color grading is really its own thing. But if I select a given clip and I come over here to my Lumetri color, under the basic correction, you can see that we have temperature. I'm going to go ahead and bring that back to 0. We have tint. If you double click on these, they'll go back to their native position. We have saturation. We also have exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, all of those things. And then, of course, you do also have your curves where you can come in and give it that nice little S-curve that everyone is so happy about. You can fine-tune your colors. You can also add in LUTs and vignettes and all kinds of different things. But for right now, I just want you to know where it's at, because we will start working with some more of this as we go through some other things. But knowing where it's at is really helpful, because especially with like exposure, contrast, saturation, all of that, these are things you need to start playing with immediately. All right. Next thing we need to talk about is audio. So you can see that I have all of these clips here. They are all silent clips. None of them have any audio. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these clips. And I'm going to right click on them, and I'm going to come down here to unlink. What that does is that takes away the link between the video and the audio, and I can now come down here and I can just get rid of all of this audio. Which is super helpful. If I come back over here to my project, and I go into my audio bin, you can see that I have this music clip here. I'm going to go ahead and drag that out into Audio 1. Now, if any of these clips had audio that I wanted to use, obviously I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to leave them in Audio 1, but since these are all silent clips, thank you videasy.com, not a sponsor, just a good place to get free stock footage. If we're looking down here, if I were to go ahead and play this, you're not going to hear anything, but you will see we're really loud right now. See, you see how it's coming in the red? That is not a good sign. So there's a couple ways we can address our volume, and volume is really the biggest thing that you need to worry about with audio when you're first getting started. So this line right here, this is our gain line, and you can go ahead and take that line, and you can see my waveform is getting smaller as I drag this line down, and now we're in a little more appropriate range of where we want our audio to be, which is very, very helpful. You can also, if you look here, if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see we have these this little square here. If I click that and I drag that, that allows me to create a fade in on this music, and I can do the same thing at the end where I can fade it out if it doesn't have one built into it. Other than that, transitions work the exact same. You move it around on the timeline the exact same as video footage. It just lives down here in the audio world as opposed to in the video world. Now, all of that being said, I know this looks like garbage, but if this is what we were going to be doing and I was going to put it on YouTube, is this good? Can I just save this and call it a day? No, we have one more thing we have to do. Obviously, yes, you should always save. Again, making sure that everything is going into the folder you want it to go into. But if I want to actually put this out for the world to see, I have to actually export this video. And so what you do is you come up here to File, Export, Media. Now I'm going to come back here to edit for a second. If you ever see export grayed out like this, that means your sequence is not selected. So we just go ahead and reselect that, come back up, we'll do this again, export, media. Again, this is where we name it. In my case, I'm going to leave it as Premiere Primer. That's fine. It's the name of my sequence. Everything's happy and wonderful there. I'm going to make sure my location is where I want it to go, and I can see right now that it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and instead of it going to my VO folder, I'm going to go ahead and just drop it into the Intro to Premiere folder. This is where I want everything to be. Hit save. Assuming your sequence is set the way you want it to be set, you can go ahead and leave this at match source adaptive high bitrate, and I almost always leave it at H.264. That is going to be MP4 video that is just the most usable pretty much everywhere, and then all we have to do is hit export. And then if we come to our project here, you can see there's my footage right there. Awesome. I left a big black space here at the beginning, but it did export as I said to. All right, I know that was kind of a long, boring run through, but it does show you all of the basics you need to know to start editing, right? We can create a project, we can save that project, we can get assets into our project, we can organize them, we can put them on the timeline, we can move them around, we can cut them, we can speed them up, we can slow them down, we can color correct them, we can add audio, we can do all of the basic things that you need to know, and we will just keep on building from here, and we'll do some really cool stuff. Yeah, that's all I've got for right now. Thanks for watching, and, keep shooting.